Pregnant wife discovers old photos of billionaire husband, stunned to learn she's mistress all along. They say every family has secrets, but nothing could have prepared Ebony Moretti for the day she stumbled upon a box of dusty photographs hidden in her billionaire husband's study. Those pictures filled with clandestine kisses, stifled laughter, and heartbreak in the shadows instantly unraveled her perfectly curated life. Who was this other woman? Why did Winston, the man she trusted above all else, keep them hidden? The answers would turn Ebony's world upside down, plunge her into a storm of deception, and reveal an earth-shattering twist. The glamorous marriage she believed to be hers was, in fact, built on a mistress's foundation all along. Ebony Moretti often thought her life was the perfect storybook, albeit one with gilded edges. She was married to Winston Moretti, a billionaire whose empire stretched across industries from luxury real estate developments to cutting-edge tech startups. Ebony was known publicly as the charming socialite who hosted lavish charity galas and fundraisers. She had a loyal circle of friends, a walk-in closet full of designer gowns, and a precious diamond ring. Winston had slipped on her finger 5 years ago in front of an adoring crowd at the Palazzo Dvorzia in Venice. Their home, an expansive estate on the outskirts of New York City, boasted marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and a winding staircase that Ebony would descend in magnificent evening gowns whenever they entertained guests. From the outside, it was a picturesque vision. Winston was the proud, handsome billionaire. Ebony was his graceful, adoring wife. Their social media presence glowed with images of them traveling to far-flung destinations, sipping cappuccinos in Rome, riding horses in the Scottish Highlands, or simply smiling at philanthropic events while cameras flashed. But Ebony had always felt a subtle sense of displacement. Although Winston showered her with gifts, he rarely discussed his past. She knew little about his upbringing or his family. Sometimes she sensed a distance, as if Winston carefully curated which parts of his life he revealed and which stayed buried. Even so, Ebony never challenged him. She believed that as long as their present was strong, the past could remain a closed book. That belief shattered one sunny afternoon when Ebony found herself rummaging through Winston's private study. She was searching for a photograph album, one they planned to use for an upcoming philanthropic documentary highlighting Winston's rags to riches narrative. Winston was out at a meeting. She had a few hours to gather the needed materials and surprise him by being helpful. She discovered a heavy oak chest tucked in the farthest corner of a dusty bookshelf. It was locked, but a small key Winston kept in a drawer slid in perfectly. Her heart raced as she opened it, half expecting old business documents or perhaps souvenirs from Winston's childhood. Instead, she found an astonishing array of images that would forever shift her perception of their relationship and of herself. Ebony carefully lifted each photo, her breath catching in her throat. The first image showed Winston in a tuxedo, standing proudly beside a stunning brunette. Her features were soft yet defined, with piercing eyes and a magnetic smile. Ebony flipped to another image. Winston was holding her hand, both of them smiling into the camera with a closeness that radiated intimacy. Confusion swirled in Ebony's mind. She initially assumed these were pictures of Winston with an ex-girlfriend, or, at most, an ex-fiancé. Yet, there was something more to these photos. They weren't casual or fleeting snapshots. They displayed a deep, emotional connection. Then came the shot that stopped Ebony's heart. Winston was standing beside the mysterious woman in front of an ornate altar in what appeared to be a lavish church. They wore formal attire, he in a tux, she in a dazzling white gown with a lace veil. In the corner of this photo, there was a date stamped, May 15, 2015, a date Ebony recognized as suspiciously close to a time when Winston was already courting her. Ebony's thoughts raced like a runaway train. The timeline didn't add up. Winston had proposed to her in July 2015. Yet, according to the date on that photo, he was clearly at a wedding in May with another woman. Ebony put a hand over her mouth, trying to stifle the rising panic. The more photos she examined, the more her stomach twisted into knots. She found pictures of Winston and the mysterious brunette on exotic beaches, at candlelit dinners, even at what looked like a honeymoon resort. Ebony recognized the decor, an exclusive getaway in the Maldives that Winston had once shown her in a travel magazine. He'd told her he planned to go there one day, not that he had already been. Her eyes landed on the back of one of the photos. Someone had scribbled names in black ink. Winston Moretti and Caroline Harper, married on May 15, 2015. Shock pulsed through Ebony. Married? The shock turned into an icy dread. She and Winston had been dating since February 2015. He had claimed to be single, free and fully hers. So how on earth had he ended up wearing a tuxedo, pledging vows to another woman 3 months later? Sitting back on the plush office chair, Ebony felt her entire world tilt. The suppressed fears and questions about Winston's secretive past demanded urgent answers. She feared that everything she believed about their relationship, about who she was in Winston's life, was suddenly up for debate. Shaken, Ebony clutched a handful of photos and closed the chest with trembling hands. She needed answers, and she needed them now, but Winston was not at home. He was likely in a high-rise boardroom, conducting million-dollar deals as if nothing was amiss. Ebony glanced around Winston's study, half expecting to see ghosts or ominous shadows flickering on the walls. Everything felt tainted now, the polished mahogany desk, the luxurious leather chair. Winston occupied every morning, the many accolades that lined the walls. Quietly, Ebony slipped out of the study, determined to maintain composure until she could confront Winston. Her heart hammered with a mixture of fury, betrayal, and raw confusion. Who was Caroline Harper, and why were they apparently still married by the time Ebony entered Winston's life? Ebony spent the rest of the afternoon in a haze. She cancelled her usual lunch date with her best friend, Harriet Bellamy, claiming a sudden headache. In truth, she felt too rattled to face the outside world. She paced around the living room, phone in hand, tempted to call Winston immediately. But a part of her insisted on planning this confrontation carefully. Winston was a master at controlling narratives. He charmed board members, smoothed over scandals, and convinced the press of any story he favored. Ebony feared if she called in a panic, he would craft some convenient lie or half-truth that she might too easily accept. She needed more evidence first. Remembering the scribbled name Caroline Harper, Ebony decided to do a quick internet search. She retreated to the upstairs library where she kept a personal laptop Winston never bothered with. With trembling fingers, she typed Caroline Harper Winston Moretti wedding into the search bar. The results stunned her. A few social media posts from 2015 showed Winston and Caroline cutting a wedding cake, toasting champagne flutes with a handful of friends. Ebony's breathing grew ragged as she clicked on each link. Most posts were private, but the preview images showed Winston beaming beside Caroline in a pristine white gown. The date stamps matched everything Ebony had seen. It was all real. This wasn't some elaborate hoax. But then Ebony noticed something odd. By the end of 2015, references to Caroline Harper abruptly stopped. No official divorce announcement, no mention of a separation. It was as if Caroline had vanished from the face of the earth, or Winston had used his substantial resources to erase her online presence. Tearful and frustrated, Ebony sank into the library's velvet armchair. A wave of nausea overtook her. Could Winston have been married to Caroline and Ebony simultaneously? Or was Ebony's own marriage actually invalid, making her nothing more than a live-in partner with a fancy ring? Memories flooded her mind. Winston proposing at the Venetian palace, Ebony's father walking her down a makeshift aisle at a small private ceremony. 6 months later, Winston declaring his eternal devotion. Despite her mounting dread, Ebony recalled how Winston had insisted on a wedding ceremony abroad with only close friends. The secrecy had thrilled her at the time. She had thought Winston wanted a deeply intimate affair. They never signed marriage papers in front of Ebony's family. Winston said it was simpler to manage the legalities privately with his attorneys. Ebony, enamored and naive, had not pressed the matter. She realized now that she might have been a willing accomplice to her own deception. Desperate for solace, Ebony dialed Harriet. The phone rang multiple times before Harriet's cheerful voice answered. "Ebony, you disappeared on me. Are you okay?" Harriet asked, her voice laced with concern. Ebony struggled to steady her voice. "I don't really know. Can you come by? I need to talk to someone. I think something terrible's happened." Harriet arrived within the hour, stepping into the grand foyer with an urgency that matched Ebony's panic. Harriet was a fiercely loyal friend from Ebony's college days. She'd witnessed Ebony's early romance with Winston, from the days Ebony was a star-struck barista in a midtown cafe to the moment Winston whisked her off her feet with promises of lavish grandeur. Ebony ushered Harriet into the living room, locked the doors behind them, and showed her the photos. Harriet's eyes widened in horror and disbelief. "But Ebony, he told all of us that you two met in February, and that he was divorced from a short-lived marriage years before. I saw your engagement photos. We all did. Are you sure this is real?" Ebony nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I found them hidden in his study. The dates match the timeline of when Winston and I were first together. Harriet, I'm terrified I'm not even his real wife. I might have been his mistress, maybe even the other woman this entire time." Harriet set the photos aside, reaching out to hold Ebony's trembling hands. "Okay, deep breaths. We'll figure this out. We'll confront Winston together, if we must, but you have to be prepared for whatever story he's going to tell you. Men like Winston, they're used to controlling every narrative." Ebony looked around the lavish living space with a sense of unreality. The life she'd built with Winston felt like a house of cards teetering on the brink of collapse. Harriet was right. She needed a plan, a way to confront Winston, gather the facts, and maintain her dignity. But the biggest question of all still lingered. Who is Ebony Moretti to Winston, if not his lawful wife? The next morning, Ebony woke with dark circles under her eyes. She'd had hardly slept, replaying scenario after scenario in her mind. She toyed with the idea of calling Winston's lawyer, an older man named Richard Hoffman, who had occasionally been introduced at parties. But she hesitated. Hoffman was fiercely loyal to Winston, and Ebony suspected he would never disclose the truth to her if Winston had instructed him otherwise. Instead, Ebony decided to engage a private investigator discreetly. She searched online for someone reputable, but not overly flashy, someone who wouldn't tip Winston off. She found Mary Chang Investigations. Mary Chang was known for her tenacity and for handling high-profile, hush-hush cases. Ebony needed that kind of expertise. She dialed the number, her heart pounding. A calm, measured voice answered. "Mary Chang." Ebony lowered her voice, as if Winston might overhear from miles away. "Hello, Mary. My name is Ebony Moretti. I'd like to hire you for a personal investigation. It concerns potential bigamy, or at least some undisclosed marital history of my husband, Winston Moretti." There was a brief pause on the line. Then Mary spoke. "I see. I know the name Winston Moretti. I assume we'll need the utmost discretion?" "Yes," Ebony said. "I'm not sure how far this goes, but I have evidence that Winston married someone named Caroline Harper around May 2015. I need to know if they divorced, or if they're still married. And if so, where does that leave me? Mary's tone remained steady. Understood. I'll start by running a background check on Winston Moretti and Caroline Harper, verifying any marriage licenses or records. If anything has been sealed or hidden, it may take more time, but I have contacts in City Hall. Would you like an in-person meeting to discuss details? Ebony agreed, and they set a time to meet at a cafe downtown the next day. After hanging up, Ebony felt a small rush of hope. Perhaps Mary Chang would confirm that Winston had quietly divorced Caroline before Ebony's wedding. Maybe the wedding photos Ebony found were remnants of a short-lived union Winston felt too ashamed to discuss. Ebony was aware that Winston's personal brand thrived on the facade of being a self-made man who overcame heartbreak and adversity. It wouldn't be so surprising if he tried to erase a failed marriage. Yet Ebony knew the timeline was damning. Winston had courted her in February, apparently married Caroline in May, and proposed to Ebony in July, 2 months after the other wedding. It made no sense. Ebony felt torn between fury and heartbreak. Could Winston have been living a double life? She didn't mention the photos or her suspicions to Winston that night. Instead, she pretended to have a migraine and retired to bed early. Winston, preoccupied with a looming merger deal, barely noticed her distant demeanor. He kissed her on the forehead, told her to rest well, and returned to his private study. Ebony lay awake, hearing him shuffle papers late into the night. Every so often she heard him take a phone call, his voice low and urgent. She wondered if he was talking to Caroline. The thought made Ebony's stomach churn. Ebony arrived at the chic downtown cafe hours before her appointment with Mary Chang. She chose a table in a secluded corner, away from curious eyes. She sipped a peppermint tea to calm her nerves, tapping her foot anxiously under the table. Mary Chang swept in right on time, an elegant woman in her early 40s, dressed in a sharp navy pantsuit. Her no-nonsense aura instantly put Ebony at ease. Mary's handshake was firm, her gaze direct. She took a seat and placed a small leather folder on the table. Miss S. Moretti, I assume you have the photos with you, or at least digital copies? Mary asked, cutting straight to business. Ebony handed over a USB drive. Scanned them all last night. The original photos are at my home. Please be careful with them if you need to have them printed. I don't want Winston finding out I'm doing this. Mary nodded. Understood. I prefer to keep everything as secure as possible. I've done a preliminary check. Winston Moretti's name is indeed on a marriage certificate issued in New York City in May 2015, listing Caroline Harper as the bride. The last known address for Caroline was a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, but she hasn't been there for years. Someone else lives there now, rented by a shell corporation that leads back to Winston's business holdings. Ebony's hands tightened around her teacup, so he was definitely married to Caroline. Do you know if they divorced? Mary flipped open her folder and scanned a few documents. No official divorce record exists in the usual jurisdictions. If they divorced abroad, I haven't found that record yet. But so far it appears they are legally still married. A cold shiver cascaded down Ebony's spine. She felt like the walls were closing in around her, so that means my own marriage is not valid. Her voice cracked. Mary's expression softened. I'm sorry, Ebony. It's possible Winston orchestrated a private settlement or had some unusual arrangement. Billionaires can sometimes use their wealth to keep certain records out of public view. I'll keep digging. Ebony nodded, her eyes brimming with tears she refused to let spill. She needed to be strong to see this through. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate your help. Is there any trace of Caroline? Any sign she's still in Winston's life? Mary paused for a moment. There's very little on her after 2015. Almost as if she vanished. My suspicion is that Winston paid her to go away, or they reached some agreement. But if they never finalized the divorce, it might be for leverage or some complicated financial arrangement. Ebony swallowed the lump in her throat. Winston was not just a sweet, wealthy suitor. He was shrewd, cunning, a man who orchestrated business deals with razor-sharp precision. Was her entire relationship just another strategic move? The conversation ended with Mary promising to keep Ebony updated. Ebony left the cafe, the city lights blurring around her as tears filled her eyes. She wanted to scream at the injustice, to rail against Winston, to hate him for what he'd done. But she also felt heartbreak. She had truly loved Winston, believed him to be her partner, her other half, the man who vowed to cherish her. The possibility that he had lied this entire time tore at her chest. Ebony had planned to gather all facts before confronting Winston, but by the time she got home, her emotions were too raw to ignore. She found Winston in the living room, casually reading some financial brief. He looked up at her with that irresistible confidence in his dark eyes. Ebony trembled, clenching her fists. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. She tried to sound firm but felt on the verge of collapsing into sobs. Winston set aside his papers, a slight frown crossing his features. "Of course, darling. Is this about the fundraiser?" Ebony's eyes blazed. "No, Winston. It's about Caroline Harper, about your marriage to her in May 2015. She watched as Winston's face turned pale, then quickly rearranged itself into a mask of calm. Ebony had seen him negotiate brutal boardroom battles, and she recognized that same steely composure now. "Ebony, where did you hear that name? I found the pictures, and I've done my own investigation." "You can't lie your way out of this," Ebony hissed. Her voice cracked under the weight of betrayal. "I want to know the truth." Winston rose slowly from the couch, placing his hands in his pockets. "You went through my private things?" His voice had an edge of coldness. "Ebony, that was a mistake. You're overreacting. You're still married to her, aren't you?" Ebony spat, tears now openly streaming down her cheeks. "Which means our marriage is nothing but a sham. I'm the mistress, Winston. The other woman." Winston took a step closer, arms raised as if to pacify her. "You're not the mistress, Ebony. That's not how it is. Caroline and I had an arrangement. I took vows with you," Ebony cried. "I gave you my heart. Meanwhile, you had a secret wife tucked away. You claimed you divorced your ex years before we ever met. That was a blatant lie." Winston's jaw tensed. "It's complicated. Caroline and I were separating. We had every intention of finalizing the divorce paperwork after the wedding. It was a whirlwind, the business expansions, her father's failing health, a host of legal complications. It just never got done in a timely manner. She left, Ebony. She wanted nothing to do with me. We agreed to handle it discreetly to avoid a public scandal that would harm both of us." Ebony's lip quivered with anger. "So you never bothered to settle it? For 5 years, Winston? You let me walk around believing I was your wife, knowing that, legally, I had no standing." Winston glanced away, unable to meet her eyes. "I was waiting for the right time. I love you, Ebony. Caroline is gone. She never wanted to be a part of my life. Our relationship was over before we signed those papers. It was a forced arrangement. She needed financial stability after some personal tragedy. In return, I needed some favors from her father. It was always business, Ebony. You are the one I love." Ebony trembled, her heart constricting. Could she even believe him? Winston stepped forward, trying to draw her into an embrace. She pushed him away. "Don't touch me," she whispered, her voice filled with fury and heartbreak. "Until you make this right, until I see the truth in black and white, I want nothing to do with you." Winston's eyes flickered with pain, but Ebony couldn't be sure if it was genuine remorse or anger at losing control over the situation. She turned and stormed off, the world feeling both surreal and tragically real all at once. Over the next week, Ebony barely spoke to Winston. She slept in a guest room, refused his offers to take her shopping or out to dinner. and attended social events alone. She told Harriet everything about the confrontation, leaving Harriet horrified and concerned. She also received updates from Mary Chang. The investigators' calls revealed that indeed no official divorce had ever been filed under Winston's name in the United States or in any of the offshore jurisdictions Mary had checked. In a surprising twist, Ebony found an ally in Winston's mother, Camilla Moretti. She was a regal woman in her late 60s, living mostly abroad in Italy. Camilla had not been particularly warm to Ebony when they first met, which Ebony had chalked up to typical mother-in-law tensions. Yet when Camilla heard through the family grapevine that Ebony had discovered Winston's secret, she flew into New York unannounced. Camilla arrived at the mansion one afternoon, letting herself in past the stunned security guards. Ebony was on the balcony, staring off into the distance at the manicured gardens. She turned at the sound of footsteps, startled to see Camilla approaching. "Camilla," Ebony said, voice guarded. "Winston isn't here. I'm here to see you, Ebony." Camilla's gaze was serious, her usually impeccable poise softened by what seemed like genuine concern. "You've learned about Caroline Harper, about Winston's situation." Ebony didn't bother denying it. "He lied to me. For years, he says the marriage to Caroline was for business, that he actually loves me. But the legalities are a mess, and I don't know what to do." Camilla's lips formed a tight line. "My son has always been overly pragmatic. It's a flaw he inherited from his father, arranging relationships as if they were corporate deals. I never approved of it, but Winston always believed money could fix any problem. That includes complicated romances." Ebony folded her arms, feeling a mix of relief and resentment. "So you knew? You knew he was still married to Caroline?" Camilla sighed, looking older and warier than Ebony had ever seen her. "I suspected. Winston wasn't fully transparent with me. I gather he told me only enough so I wouldn't raise objections when he announced his plans to wed you. He brushed off my questions about finalizing his divorce from Caroline. I didn't want to believe he would be so reckless." Bitterness laced Ebony's words. "Reckless is an understatement. He's ruined our relationship, humiliated me, and made me question everything." Camilla stepped closer, placing a tentative hand on Ebony's shoulder. "I'm here because I don't want you to suffer alone. I have some influence over Winston, the first prepared to force him to finalize his divorce immediately. Perhaps that will give you two a chance to reconcile." Ebony looked away, tears threatening to spill yet again. "He's had 5 years to do that. Why should I trust him now?" Camilla exhaled a shaky breath. "Winston needs a wake-up call, and I believe this is it. He cares for you, Ebony, more than you realize. He's just always put business first. But now he's on the verge of losing you, and I doubt he can bear that." Ebony closed her eyes, battling the turmoil in her heart. She did still love Winston, but how could she ever trust him again? "I need him to show me proof that I'm not just some convenient placeholder. I need the actual divorce from Caroline and full transparency about every secret he's hiding." Camilla nodded. "I'll do what I can. Winston's father made similar mistakes, and it cost him dearly. I don't want to see my son follow down that same destructive path." Over the next few days, Ebony noticed Winston talking to attorneys, locked in tense phone calls. He rarely tried to engage her, as if giving her space. Occasionally, Ebony caught him staring at her with an expression that bordered on desperate. She refused to meet his gaze, uncertain if she wanted an apology or a confession of love or both. Behind the scenes, Camilla worked with Ebony and Mary Chang to locate Caroline. The idea was to approach Caroline and see if she would sign the divorce papers or reveal any lingering blackmail or threats Winston might have used to keep the marriage intact. Ebony's emotions vacillated between a desire for a swift resolution and paralyzing fear about what deeper secrets might surface if they did find Caroline Harper. One quiet evening, Ebony was alone in the library, going through Mary Chang's newest file. Winston was at the office, presumably working late. The file contained tidbits about Caroline's family. Her father, Howard Harper, had once owned a chain of luxury hotels but fell into debt after a series of unwise expansions. Winston's real estate firm, Moretti Holdings, had apparently bailed him out on the condition that Caroline marry Winston, forging a powerful alliance between the two families. It was an old-fashioned business arrangement, the sort Ebony had only read about in historical romances. Ebony pressed a hand to her temple, so Winston never married for love in the first place. He'd used marriage as a negotiation tactic to save Caroline's father from ruin. Caroline, from what Ebony could gather, had gone along with it because she felt trapped, or perhaps to save her father's legacy. The file also included a perplexing note. Caroline had gone off the grid in December 2015, right around the time Ebony's wedding ceremony took place. There was no sign of any movement in her bank accounts, no property purchases, no social media presence, almost as if she had decided to vanish, or been paid to vanish. As Ebony set down the file, a wave of nausea struck her. She thought of all the times Winston had insisted he was the sort of man who would do anything for love. He had told Ebony that she saved him from loneliness, that he had been searching for genuine affection amidst a sea of superficial relationships. But now she wondered how much of that was real and how much was another carefully scripted performance. Fatigue overcame her, and she closed her eyes, leaning back in the leather chair. In her mind, she pictured Winston's smile, the twinkle in his eyes whenever they joked about traveling the world. She remembered the unguarded moments, like when Winston taught her how to waltz in their living room, or when they spent a night stargazing on the mansion's rooftop. Could those moments have been genuine, overshadowed by the monstrous lie of his first marriage? She felt a presence in the doorway, and her eyes snapped open. Winston stood there, his tie loosened, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. "We need to talk," he said softly, entering the library. Ebony straightened, folding her arms over her chest. "I don't know if I can bear another round of half-truths." He approached slowly, holding up a sheaf of papers, divorce documents for Caroline, dated, signed, and ready to be filed. My attorney finally reached her. She agreed to sign. It'll be finalized in a matter of days. Ebony's heart thudded. "So you were still married?" Winston sighed. "Technically, yes. I'm not proud of it." Caroline refused to sign them initially because she felt cheated. Her father lost control of his hotel chain to my company. She blamed me for it. Then she disappeared. My attempts to track her down were half-hearted. I was afraid that if I pressed too hard, she'd create a public scandal. Ebony stared at him, anger simmering. "So you put your image and empire above my right to know the truth. You let me walk around believing I was your legal wife." He swallowed, shaking his head. "I'm so sorry, Ebony. I was terrified of losing you if you discovered the truth. I rationalized it, thought I could fix everything quietly, but I ended up betraying your trust in the worst way." Tears slipped down Ebony's cheeks. "Where does that leave us now, Winston? You've made me question everything. I don't even know my own identity within this marriage." Winston moved closer, his voice trembling with genuine emotion she had rarely witnessed in him. "It leaves us at a crossroads. I love you, Ebony. No arrangement or business deal can compare to what we share. Let me prove that to you. Let me make this right. Once these papers are filed, I want to marry you for real in the eyes of the law and of everyone else." Ebony's throat constricted. Part of her wanted to fling her arms around him, to believe in redemption. Another part wanted to run away and never look back. "It's not that simple," she finally said. "How can I trust you not to hide something else when it suits you? Winston bowed his head. I understand. I'll do whatever it takes, sign over assets, put everything on the table, go to counseling, anything. Just give me a chance. She stared at the divorce documents he extended toward her, a swirl of emotions engulfing her. This was what she had wanted, right? A real marriage to Winston, free from hidden wives or secret pasts. But the scars of betrayal were fresh and deep. She could only manage a whisper. I need time to think. For the next few days, Ebony avoided Winston as much as possible. She attended events alone, politely deflecting questions about Winston's absence by claiming he was busy with a major business deal. Harriet noticed Ebony's guarded, melancholic demeanor and tried to encourage her friend to take a break, perhaps a trip somewhere far away from the chaos. Ebony refused, determined to see this through. The divorce papers moved swiftly through the courts, thanks in part to Winston's legal team and a financial settlement that Mary Chang estimated was in the millions. Caroline Harper, it seemed, was more than happy to sign for the right price. Ebony wondered bitterly if Winston believed any relationship could be fixed by throwing money at it. The entire concept disgusted her. Meanwhile, Winston tried to earn Ebony's trust back in small ways. He began taking Ebony to the office, showing her the intricate workings of Moretti Holdings meetings, financial reports, philanthropic committees, and property tours. He opened up about his childhood in the impoverished outskirts of Milan, about how his family struggled until his father found success in real estate speculation. He told Ebony about his father's many affairs, how Winston had grown up watching women come and go, each time overshadowed by financial transaction or benefit. Maybe that's why I allowed my own relationship to become a business agreement, Winston admitted one day, his voice tinged with remorse. They were seated in his office, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. I was repeating the pattern I saw growing up, Ebony. But you changed all that. With you, it was never about money or status. You made me feel human. Ebony listened in silence, trying to quell the flicker of empathy that rose within her. She was torn, yes. Winston had clearly been molded by a toxic upbringing, but that didn't excuse his deception. She needed a reason to believe that going forward would be different. At night, Ebony lay awake in the guest room, playing with the ring Winston had given her when he first asked her to marry him. She remembered how it had sparkled in the Venetian moonlight, how Winston had knelt before her on a gondola, proclaiming his undying love. It had felt so real, so pure. But now she questioned whether it was all staged. Winston texted her constantly, asking if she needed anything, if she wanted to talk. She rarely replied. She needed space-time to assess if her heart could endure rebuilding something from these ashes. Just as Ebony was on the verge of a decision whether to trust Winston again or leave him for good, Mary Chang delivered a bombshell discovery. She called Ebony to come to her office immediately. Ebony raced there, heart pounding with dread. Mary greeted her with a grave expression. "Ebony, I found something that changes everything." Ebony sank into a chair, bracing herself. "What is it?" Mary slid a manila folder across the desk. Inside, Ebony saw an array of bank statements, one from a Swiss account under Winston's name. Large, regular payments had been going to an account under the name Caroline Harper since 2016. Well after Ebony's so-called wedding, the payments continued right up until 3 months ago. Ebony's pulse skyrocketed as she read the amounts, tens of thousands of dollars, transferred monthly. Winston's been paying Caroline a substantial sum for years, Mary said quietly. "It's hush money, Ebony. He's been paying her to keep quiet, stay away, and not contest anything publicly." Ebony closed her eyes, bile rising in her throat. So Winston not only hid a wife, but he also paid her off regularly behind Ebony's back. She thought of how Winston had promised that Caroline was gone from his life. He never mentioned these ongoing payments. If Ebony confronted him, Would he claim it was a settlement? Another arrangement? The cycle of half-truths and shady deals felt never-ending. Mary rested a hand on Ebony's shoulder. "I'm sorry. I don't know if Winston plans to continue these payments. But it's clear that until a few months ago, he was actively maintaining this arrangement." Ebony stood, tears forming again. "Thank you, Mary. The first needed to know this. I can't believe he kept paying her. Everything he's told me about wanting to fix this, maybe it's just more manipulation." Ebony left Mary's office, burning with righteous anger. She had tried to be patient, to let Winston atone, but this new betrayal was too much. She couldn't see a way forward with a man who orchestrated people's lives like pawns on a chessboard. As she drove home, Ebony resolved to confront Winston one last time. And if his answers didn't satisfy her, she was done ready to walk away and reclaim her life. Ebony found Winston in the mansion's grand foyer, conferring with two of his lawyers. She marched past them, ignoring their greetings, and demanded Winston follow her to the study. Once inside, she shut the doors, her eyes blazing. "I just came from Mary Chang," Ebony announced, voice shaking with fury. "She showed me the payments you've been making to Caroline Harper. Were you ever going to tell me about that, or were you planning to keep me in the dark forever?" Winston's face fell. He looked genuinely rattled. "Ebony, save it." Ebony threw the folder of financial statements at him. The sheets fluttered across the desk. "You told me you loved me, that Caroline was out of your life, but you've been paying her off for years. That's not just a business arrangement. That's lying, Winston." He ran a hand through his hair, despair etched on his face. "It started as hush money, yes. She threatened to go public about our arrangement if I didn't support her financially. Once I met you, I couldn't afford that scandal. My brand, my businesses, they would have crumbled. So I agreed to pay her. I wanted to protect what we were building." Ebony let out a hollow laugh. "Protect what we were building? By paying off your other wife while you presented yourself as a devoted husband to me? How am I supposed to trust anything you say now?" He stepped forward, hands trembling. "Ebony, please hear me out. I ended those payments 3 months ago after I finally tracked Caroline down to sign the divorce documents. I swear it's over. She won't be receiving another cent from me. And now the divorce will be final in a matter of days. We can start fresh." Her eyes flickered with pain. "Start fresh on what foundation, Winston? Lies? Deception? I've poured my soul into a marriage that isn't even real." He reached out, voice breaking. "But my feelings are real. Don't you understand? I've never felt this way about anyone. If you leave now, everything I've done, no matter how misguided, will be for nothing. I want a life with you, truly and legally." Ebony stared at him, tears pooling in her eyes. She saw raw desperation in Winston's gaze, but she also recognized a lifetime of manipulation behind his words. Her mind whirled with memories. The first time he told her he loved her, the night they danced beneath the chandelier, the private ceremony where she believed she had become his wife. All of it overshadowed by a monstrous lie. A hush descended in the study, broken only by Winston's ragged breathing. Finally, Ebony spoke, her voice deathly calm. "I can't do this anymore, Winston. I deserve better than these half-truths and shady deals. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." He looked like she had slapped him. "So what are you saying?" She raised her chin. "I'm saying I need to leave. I need space, time to figure out if there's anything left of us that's salvageable." He stumbled back, agony on his features. "I'll do anything, sign over half my assets, leave the company, whatever it takes." Ebony shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's not about the money. It's about trust, Winston. and you've destroyed mine." Without another word, she turned and left the study. Outside, Winston's lawyers stood, gaping at the emotional tension swirling around their billionaire client. Ebony walked past them in a daze. Her mind made up. She couldn't stay in a mansion built on secrets. Ebony packed her essentials and quietly left the mansion at dawn the next day, ignoring Winston's pleas outside her door. She took refuge in Harriet's townhouse in Brooklyn, a modest but welcoming space. Harriet enveloped Ebony in a warm hug, letting her cry on the living room couch for hours. The next few days were a blur. Sleep eluded Ebony, food tasted like cardboard, and her heart felt irreparably shattered. She couldn't believe how quickly her world had collapsed. Winston bombarded her phone with calls, texts, emails. He apologized, begged for forgiveness, promised radical changes, even threatened to cut business ties with anyone who dared question Ebony's place in his life. But Ebony didn't respond. She was too broken, too furious. She needed to rebuild her self-worth, to remember who she was outside of Winston's shadow. She reached out to a divorce attorney. Ironically, she wasn't legally married, but she needed advice on potential settlements or claims she might have. The attorney explained that Ebony could file civil suits for fraud, emotional distress, perhaps even a claim to some of Winston's assets, if it could be proven that he led her to believe their marriage was legally binding. Yet Ebony found little comfort in the legal complexities. All she ever wanted was a genuine partnership. Slowly, Ebony began to see glimpses of life beyond Winston. Harriet encouraged her to reclaim hobbies she'd abandoned, like painting and yoga. She also suggested Ebony volunteer at a local women's shelter, a cause Ebony had supported only in passing while living with Winston. Now, Ebony found solace in helping women who had been deceived or abused in their own lives. Hearing their stories made her realize she wasn't alone in feeling betrayed. During this time, Winston's final divorce from Caroline Harper went through. The media caught wind that Winston had finalized a confidential settlement, leading to whispers that Ebony might soon be publicly acknowledged as his one true wife. Paparazzi staked out Harriet's street, hoping for a statement. Ebony refused to give them one. She had no desire to feed that tabloid frenzy. But one fateful evening, Ebony found Winston waiting outside Harriet's townhouse. He stood by a sleek black car, looking somehow humbled. No designer suit, no entourage. He was just a man in a plain shirt and jeans, eyes dark with longing. She hesitated on the stoop, keys in hand. "Why are you here?" He stepped forward, offering a single rose. "Because I can't live without you. And I'm here without any lawyers, without any hidden agendas. I just want to talk." Ebony looked at the rose, tears threatening to cloud her vision. She opened Harriet's door and led him inside to the living room. They sat across from each other, Ebony perched on an armchair, Winston on the couch. An uncomfortable silence stretched. "Thank you for seeing me," Winston began. "I've never been good at humbling myself, Ebony. My entire life, I believed power and control were the keys to happiness. That's what my father taught me. But I see now how wrong that is. I lost sight of what really matters: truth, trust, love." Ebony swallowed hard. "Words aren't enough anymore, Winston." He nodded, tears shining in his eyes. "I know. That's why I've started therapy. Individual therapy, and I hope eventually couples therapy, if you'll agree. I told my entire board I'm stepping back from day-to-day control of Moretti Holdings. My mother is moving back to Italy, but she left me with some choice words. She told me that the legacy of my father's manipulations dies with me if I choose to let it." Ebony sniffled, not sure what to think. Winston handed her a neatly folded document. She skimmed it, her eyes widening. It was a signed contract, relinquishing a significant portion of Moretti Holdings' shares to Ebony if they chose to marry officially or if they parted ways. The arrangement ensured Ebony would never be left with nothing. It was an enormous gesture, but Ebony had mixed feelings about it. "Money doesn't fix this," she said quietly. Winston nodded. "I know, but I wanted to prove I'm not going to keep leveraging finances to control you or anyone else. If you walk away today and never return, I won't fight you. But if you want to give us another chance, I promise to do the hard work therapy, honesty, transparency in all things." A tear slipped from Ebony's eye. She wasn't sure if she could forgive him, but she saw something in Winston's face that she hadn't before, remorse mingled with genuine humility. For so long, Winston had hidden behind a polished facade. Now he was bearing raw vulnerability. "I can't make any promises," Ebony whispered, voice trembling, "but I can see you're trying. Maybe we can start with therapy, just therapy, no wedding date. I need to see consistency, Winston. Real change." His shoulders sagged with relief, and he gave a small nod. "That's all I ask." The weeks that followed were tentative and fraught with uncertainty. Ebony found a therapist specializing in relationship trauma, and Winston agreed to attend sessions with Ebony once a week. At first, Ebony sat stiffly on the couch, arms crossed, hardly able to look at Winston. Gradually, they each shared their pains and fears. Winston spoke of his father's repeated affairs, the toxic idea that love was just another deal to be brokered. Ebony sobbed over the photos she had discovered, the humiliation of realizing she was a mistress in a sham marriage. Therapy didn't magically fix everything, but it gave them a space to communicate honestly, to break down decades of Winston's conditioning. Ebony started to see slivers of hope. Winston relinquished day-to-day control of his empire to a trusted CEO, devoting more time to philanthropic work and personal growth. He insisted Ebony come with him on visits to the women's shelter she'd grown fond of, offering sizable donations and asking Ebony to oversee the charitable projects herself. Still, trust was not easily rebuilt. Ebony made it clear she needed to see Winston's authenticity, not just grand gestures. She needed him to be open about any business deals, any ties to Caroline, any skeletons lurking in the closet. Winston, for his part, tried to live up to that promise. He showed Ebony every financial statement, every legal document, ensuring that no secrets remained. It was a slow process. There were days Ebony wanted to give up, to flee the painful memories. Yet she also recognized that Winston was genuinely fighting for a chance to be a better man. For all his flaws, Ebony still loved him, and she began to see glimpses of the warm, caring partner she had believed him to be in the early days of their relationship. Finally, after many months, Ebony felt ready to take the next step. It was on a crisp autumn day in Central Park, where Winston, in a thoughtful echo of simpler times, got down on one knee and proposed to Ebony with a modest ring, free of flamboyant diamonds. "No fancy show," he murmured, "just a man asking the woman he loves for a chance at forever." Tears shimmered in Ebony's eyes as she realized she wanted to say yes. Because this time, the proposal wasn't about business or illusions. It was about two flawed humans trying to love each other in truth. She nodded, whispering a tearful yes. Their wedding was small, just Ebony, Winston, Harriet, Camilla, and a few close friends. No paparazzi, no press releases. Winston signed the marriage license in front of Ebony, Harriet, and a justice of the peace, ensuring Ebony witnessed the legal process with her own eyes. The moment felt both bittersweet and hopeful, a testament to how far they had come and how far they still had to go. Standing beneath a simple white arch in Harriet's modest backyard, Ebony looked into Winston's eyes, her soul trembling with cautious optimism. This time, the vows felt genuine. This time, there were no hidden wives or hush money. This time, Ebony Moretti was truly a wife, not a mistress, and she'd chosen it with eyes wide open. Thank you so much for joining me on this tumultuous journey of love, deception, and redemption. If you've been gripped by Ebony's shocking discovery that she was never really Winston's legal wife and followed each heartbreaking twist of their story, please let me know what you think in the comments. Every step of Ebony's emotional roller coaster reminded us that sometimes the biggest betrayals hide behind the most lavish facades, and trust once broken can only be pieced back together through genuine, painstaking effort. I hope this story resonates with anyone who's wrestled with hidden truths in a relationship or discovered shocking secrets that turned their world upside down. If you found value, drama, or powerful lessons here, please hit that like button. Share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life style drama fiction and riveting tales. Your support means everything. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more stories.